Hey everyone, welcome back to Fear Free Passive Investing, your source for passive commercial real estate education. My name is Lucas Miller, host of the show, host of the YouTube channel, and I hope everything is going well. Today is May 4th. Well, not really. This is when it's going to be released, but I hope everyone's doing well. I hope May rents are going well. Spring here in Colorado, it's beautiful. And I just love this time of the year. And we have a great show today. I'm really excited for this. But before we jump into the show, today's tip is just to remind everyone that I have a newsletter that you could sign up for, even if you're not interested in passively investing in real estate right now. It has some really good content that you might enjoy. So head to the link in the description or at fearfreepassive.com and sign up for that today. So a couple of weeks ago, I recorded a video for the Fear Free Passive Investing YouTube channel about how I believed that third-party asset management was critical for most operators for several reasons, but we'll get into that. But I thought it would be a really good idea to have an actual asset management company on the show to give us their take on why asset management is so important. So I got Patrick Duffy on the show today. He's the founder and CEO of Tactical Asset Management. They're a leading provider of asset management and technology services for multifamily operators. And Mr. Duffy is also an active multifamily investor, and he has a huge portfolio of over 1,700 units, I believe. Before becoming a full-time investor, Patrick actually held structured finance and capital markets roles for various banks and institutions, and he graduated from Harvard in 2013. So I'm really excited to have Patrick on the show today. So let's just jump right in and start talking asset management. All right, Patrick, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Lucas, thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited about today's show because frankly, I'm a huge proponent of what you do because I believe it's probably one of the most critical items that passive investors need to be paying attention to, and sponsors can actually do to mitigate some of that downside risk. But before we get into asset management, for people who don't know you, maybe you could give us background on how you got started in multifamily investing.
Certainly. So I started my career back in 2013, primarily in the commercial real estate finance industry. And so me and the teams that I was part of, we were making loans to multifamily operators, commercial and office investors, warehouse, industrial, retail, and even single family investors that were doing it on a large scale. And so I was part of capital markets teams that were focused on providing loans to those folks. And then over the next couple of years, I joined some other capital markets teams that did a whole range of functions, but it was always on the finance aspect and financing the actual operators out there doing the work. And in about late 2016, I really started taking steps and actions to get onto the other side of the equation and be the actual borrower and be the operator out in the field doing the real estate investing. And I started reaching out to some of my former borrowers and clients that I had done work with, asking them how I get started. And they suggested find a mentor. And so I was able to find that initial partner towards the end of 2016. And in April of 2017, so about 3 years now ago, I did my first deal, and that was a 64 unit deal in Memphis, Tennessee, and in the process of selling it right now. And it was the first deal to show me that it was possible to partner with other people and do multifamily with whatever limited means that I had. And since then, I've done another 7 transactions or so, just under 1,800 units in total in the portfolio. And I also asset manage other deals for other syndicators of about 1,800 units in number. So in total, my firm and I, we asset manage about 3,500 units across 20 properties, but it all started from that first 64 unit property I did with a partner about 3 years ago.
That's fantastic. You saw you saw your borrowers what they were getting paid and you decided you wanted a piece of that and
Pretty much, yeah, and also the flexibility. I wanted
yeah.
the lifestyle and what I perceived to be a lot of the freedom that they had, and so I thought it would be fun to be in their shoes doing some of the projects they were doing, and so yeah, I was very motivated to get out and reached out to them on how to get started.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I want to transition to asset management because that's obviously what we're going to talk about today.
Sure.
Uh, For people who might not know how this structure works, pretend someone has no idea what asset management is. Give us like a little bit of a breakdown of what you do for operators.
Sure. So within a multifamily syndication or investment deal, most folks are going to hire a third party management company that is going to be your boots on the ground, day to day, taking care of resident problems, collecting rent, all of that good stuff that you hire a property manager to do. But somewhat of a lesser known function to people is asset management. And asset management is the activity undertaken by the property owners or the lead syndicators in managing the property manager. So we're managing the implementation of the business plan if there's a lot of rehab to do. And we're also managing weekly data that comes to us from the property manager that shows what our occupancy looks like, what our collections look like, and drilling down and trying to correct problems before they really grow into bigger problems. And I'd almost draw this analogy with asset management and multifamily. It's like steering a large oil tanker, and we're in charge of causing the initial steer that maybe in 1 to 3 months time you can really start to see a difference in the improvement of the property. And so we're just the ones kind of manning the controls to make sure that the property is aligned with the business plan and really moving in the direction we want it to move.
That's a really good analogy, mainly because I think the mindset of an operator is that, um, oh, our occupancy dipped a tiny little bit. It's not going to mean anything in the grand scheme of things, but that tiny little dip turns into a bigger dip and a bigger dip, and eventually that starts to steer that ship off course.
That's
And
right.
so you need someone at the wheel the whole time, making sure like you're right there. So I really like that analogy.
Thanks.
Um, how'd you get into this professionally? Why? I mean, why you?
Yeah. Well, it's funny, and just to touch on the analogy really one quickly, is that with multifamily, these businesses, changes in these businesses can take a long time to achieve, and so very positive changes. And so I use that analogy because it literally sometimes takes the turning radius of an oil tanker in that sense. Some of these good changes take a long time to actually reveal themselves at the property. You just got to start them early and stay on top of them. But in terms of how did I end up in asset management? It was really by the conditions of my initial partnership. So the way that I was going to earn real equity in these deals was that I was going to have to put in the sweat equity for the asset management. And there really wasn't any playbook. There wasn't a manual on how to asset manage. I just kind of figured out by doing, and then talking to other people that had been in the space and doing asset management on a more institutional level than certainly what I was. And so it was frankly a lot of learning by doing. And because I was the de facto asset manager in order to earn the type of equity that I wanted, I just became the guy on those first several transactions that we did in 2017, and just really put a lot of my systems into place over the coming year, and learned how to get a lot more specific and rigid about asset management, and actually getting better and better each month. I have a one employee that works for me, and he's been with me for about 7 months now, and we've developed some software and tools together to help us become even better. And I'm constantly learning and reaching out to folks with more experience than me to kind of backfill some of the teaching and methodologies that maybe I just kind of learned to do accident, but there's other ways to do it. So it's all kind of happened by virtue of just being part of these partnerships.
Yeah, and learning like on the fly almost, I would say. Like you learn from mistakes, you make a change in your system so it doesn't happen again, and you get better every day, right?
Yeah, and I also really try to engage. We have relationships with a couple really great property management firms that we work with across the portfolio, and I really try to engage them on how, and I engage them early about how should I act from an owner perspective. What things should I be checking on to help you do better? So I really, I know that there's some logic to keeping somewhat of a arm's distance relationship with your property manager, and not get too cozy because ultimately you're there to check them. But while we certainly do check them, we really approach our property manager relationships as partners in this business. They oftentimes, we've seen it, come back and yield dividends for us in the lengths that they'll go to in order to perform for us. But then it also allows us to get better at being owners and responding to things immediately when we need to, and looking out for things that aren't really gotchas for the property managers, but are just kind of like, hey, you missed this here, and it allows them to get better on their system as well. So,
And it sets expectations, right?
right.
On-site personnel don't know what to expect with you. They don't know what you're going to pay attention to. They might get away with some stuff with the previous ownership, and that's not going to fly with the new ownership. So it's a learning process for everyone, right?
That's right. And it's really in-person meetings, even though a lot of us, I would imagine on this podcast, we invest passively and over great distances. Meeting the people on site, meeting the people on the ground and the team in the market is so critical, because that's where you get across that that framework of expectations that, hey, it may have worked this way with the previous owner, it's not going to be this way with us. So it definitely helps that get across.
Yeah, that's actually a really good transition. If I'm a passive investor and I know nothing about asset management or what the operators do behind the scenes, why should I insist that they use a service like yours, a third-party asset management service? What do you offer that the in-house asset managers are not doing?
Sure. I think that we offer definitely a level of data tracking and awareness and robustness in our analysis and reporting to investors. So we are laser focused on data in terms of the data that we're getting from our property managers as it relates to the project status, where occupancy may be at a certain given point, and really how much we're making and taking in relative to our budget. So um, not to say that a lot of operators don't already do this, but I really don't believe a lot of other operators do it to the extent that we do, in that we really pinpoint the areas in which we can either make more money or save on expenses, and also keep our projects really humming along at the property. So I would definitely, as a passive investor, really grill the operator or the syndicator on what are some of their systems and processes for asset management. And you don't have to insist on using my firm, but at least in your own due diligence, make sure that the operator that you're about to invest with does have some decent systems and processes in place for asset management, because it's critical. And during the good times can kind of mask how critical they are, but during times like these with COVID-19, it really shows who's ready to step in and asset manage during a crisis or when things are not going that well. So it definitely has relevance going forward.
Yeah. In my experience, I've talked to a lot of syndicators, and everyone wants to talk about the next acquisition. Everyone wants to talk about the sale. Everyone wants to talk about how much cash flow they're generating. Nobody ever talks about asset management. Nobody ever talks about, quarterly site visits, making sure they're picking up trash, making sure soffits are replaced correctly, like all these things that are so unsexy and
Right.
minute and mundane. Nobody pays attention to that. And so my
Yeah.
theory has always been that, yes, everybody likes to get excited about a new acquisition or a new sale, but nobody's paying attention to year 4, year 5, year 6, year 7, when that grind is just continuing. And like we were saying earlier, those tiny little shifts are going to put you off course down the road. So that's why I think this is so critical for passive investors to understand that your sponsor needs to be in this for the long haul.
Mhm.
And having a partner, hiring that out third party just makes so much sense to me.
Yeah. And you said a lot of great things there, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it's so funny because many of our deals are entering their third year or later into their second year. And you're so right in that a lot of people, I think, lose focus and are looking towards that next acquisition where there might be a commission or an acquisition fee. And so they're viewing that as their primary source of revenue. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as they're good deals. But it really does kind of take you away a little bit from the what do I need to do at this property that I own in order to make sure that it meets or exceeds the business plan that we put forth. And not a lot of people ask about that. And no one's perfect, and we've been guilty of it too. Sometimes, kind of, as deals mature a little bit and things are going really well, frankly, not pushing where we can be pushing, And so we have developed some tools on our side that allow us to do those somewhat automatically so that we are, enforced in discipline by some automation. So we kind of get that, but it's very easy, frankly, to even lose your focus when things are going so well that you become complacent and rest on your laurels a little bit. And that's equally as challenging an opportunity,
Mhm.
because here you have a property that's telling you and showing you that it wants to do better than you even projected. And so you have the opportunity now to like take it there, but maybe because it's going so well, you don't apply that extra level of effort, which is just as bad anyway. So
Yeah. Wow. That I hadn't thought of that. Like if it's going so well, pushing it even further. But that makes a lot of sense. I I think that if there's any sponsors that are listening, and that's not our audience here, but if there are any sponsors listening, I just speaking from experience, taking that off your plate is such a relief. I can't
yes,
tell you what a relief that is to just have you focusing on that instead of us. And of course, the sponsors are still involved in day to day stuff, but the majority of that brunt falls on your firm because you have the systems in place, because you have the economies of scale when purchasing things, because you have the relationship with the management company. All of that stuff is made much easier on the owners, and it's just a no-brainer to me that other people don't do this. So I I guess all that to say, are groups that aren't utilizing third-party asset managers leaving money on the table? I mean, is this really that critical in good times?
right. Well, I really appreciate it, and I've come across several operators that do a phenomenal job on asset management. I want to make that
Hmm.
clear.
Yeah.
There's some folks out there that I've learned from and I think do a phenomenal job on asset management, but a lot of other folks out there that it may just not naturally be in their skill set, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Hmm.
But they would be prime candidates to maybe look to bring in a third party, because there's some folks that are frankly phenomenal at acquisitions and capital raising, and they should continue doing that. But that's a prime opportunity where we can come in and help supplement any shortcomings on the asset management. And um, and so as it relates though to potentially leaving money on the table, I think there very much could be. We find some deals that been asked to come in and asset manage, and we're able to chart a path forward as to really how much better this asset could be doing, and then we're able to take it there, with some involvement from the operators, of course, on key decisions. But generally, when it's put kind of in our court that we can work with the property manager and take it the direction we want, we've shown some really good results in being able to do that.
Um, does this cost the investors any money? Like, is that cost passed along to them, and do they pay extra for your services, things like that?
No. So the beautiful thing is, and you should check with your sponsor, but typically every syndication deal has a certain allowable amount of fees. And they're really designed by the operator, and the industry kind of has a certain set of accepted fees. And one of those is an asset management fee. So it's something in the syndication, if you're invested in one, that you're technically already paying for, which is a asset management fee, which can be from anywhere between 1.5% to 2% of the monthly gross collections, that goes to the sponsor, for their job of asset managing the deal and working with the property management partner. So all of our compensation as a third party asset management company comes directly from the sponsors. And since they're already earning an asset management fee, we're typically seeking a 1.5% asset management fee for the work that we do. So it's nothing that the passive investors ever actually feel.
That makes a lot of sense. So the sponsor, like myself, is charging 1.5%. We're going to lose out on that money as an operator, but we pass that on to you. But all that weight and all that work is lifted off of us, and now we just have a couple phone calls every month, and we just make sure that you're doing your job, which you
Right.
obviously are. Um, but I want to circle back to what you said earlier about the coronavirus, the COVID-19. How is that affecting what you do, and how are you dealing with that? Let's just throw that
Sure.
out there.
Yeah, so it's been a challenge for everyone, and I think what's been interesting in just kind of viewing the landscape and how some of my colleagues are getting involved with the COVID-19 epidemic is, a lot of them, I think, prior to this were far more hands off with regard to tenant relations than they are now. And I think that's just kind of a unifying principle. And you have to be involved in tenant relations now as it relates to COVID. You just have to be. It's the right thing to do. But just by virtue of where our properties are located in kind of high renter markets like Memphis, Tennessee, and certain parts of Jacksonville, where we're used to dealing with tenants every day and really kind of clawing for every inch on the asset management front that we can in order to add value. When the COVID crisis came along, sure, there was an added element of, okay, let's make sure that tenants know kind of what the new protocol is on property, and we're protecting our on-site folks. But from a observance and being as militant as we normally are around collections, that didn't really change. That was really the same mindset that we had. So the crisis didn't really affect that too much, but we were certainly more conscientious and paying attention to some of the just frank economic realities that, hey, we're probably going to have a little bit of a fatter collection towards the end of the month, and it's going to dip a little bit towards the middle of the month. But we just got to stay on it and let our tenants know that we're here and we're willing to work with them. Because ultimately, we also realize some of the real good that could come out of this crisis was being perceived by our tenants as a caring, good company to work with. And so we feel that that has been effectively conveyed. But luckily, just given how much we already have to kind of claw and scratch for all the value that we add to our properties, there wasn't too much of a mind shift change. So that was a positive to see that we were actually kind of well prepared for it. It was just a different circumstance that we just had to, devise some tactics for. But it's been interesting. I mean, so far we're seeing across the properties about a 10% dip in collections, which, given that most of our properties are comprised of Class C assets, it's actually not too bad of a dip month over month. There's some assets that do much worse than that. Some assets that do much better. But it's been an interesting month for sure. It's been kind of a mixed bag around collections. Some properties have done far worse than I thought they would do. And so I think just kind of looking out to May and even to June, depending on how this lasts, it'll be just something we really need to remain laser focused on and continue to monitor.
Yeah, we're recording this around mid-April right now, so obviously that could all be changed and blow up when
Right.
this comes out. But
Yeah. No, that's not a projection. So
yeah.
for anyone
No,
listening.
I think that jives with what the NMHC, the National Multifamily Housing Council, is saying. Roughly 10, 11, 12% down on collections for multifamily, but expected to rebound as people start going back to work. That's probably pretty obvious. But I want to go back just real quick. You mentioned Jacksonville and Memphis and those areas. Are those the only places that you're working right now, or can you do this nationwide?
We can certainly do this nationwide. The 20 properties that we happen to asset manage right now are all within the southeastern United States. But I'm in California. My colleague is in Denver, Colorado, and we're constantly traveling. And so we're able to accommodate really any assignment across the country.
Yeah. That's exciting. And really, just to round out our discussion here, from a passive investor standpoint, I hear what you're saying. I really like what you're saying. What can I do if I'm already invested? How can I talk to our sponsor about this? If I haven't invested yet, how can I make sure the sponsor that I'm choosing has this front of mind, asset
Right.
management?
Well, definitely take a look at my website. It's www.tactical-asset.com, and look at what we're about, look at what we provide, and certainly bring it to the attention of your sponsors and have a dialogue with them. If you think we could be a good addition, let them know about us and at least put that in front of them. And on future calls with sponsors or syndications, certainly ask them what they're doing in order to make asset management a priority. And if they're looking for solutions or help like ours, certainly feel free to refer us. We love to talk with new operators and see how we can be of help. So I would just keep an open dialogues. A lot of passive investors, some of the passive investors in deals that I'm a part of, and I originated those transactions, they will come to me sometimes saying, hey, I found this cool little thing. maybe this might have relevance to you. And it turns out to be a neat little tool. So I think just kind of having an open dialogue with your sponsors is just a healthy thing to have anyway. And so you could just bring up this in conversation with them.
Yeah. Especially for teams that aren't as, I guess, analytical is a good way to put it. But if you're focused on acquisitions, if that's your wheelhouse, and raising capital and acquisitions, that's what you do, especially you got to outsource this. Like it's a no brainer. If you're more analytical, you like systems, you like details, you might be able to get away with it. But
Right.
in my case, like I have to have that outsourced because that would not be in my wheelhouse. I wouldn't be doing a service to my investors. So obviously that works out really well for people like myself. So you mentioned tactical-asset.com. Any other way people can get in touch with you?
You can go ahead and email me directly at pduffy, PDUFFY at tactical-asset.com. That would just be a direct line to me. Otherwise, the website is really a good place to start so you can see various services and things that we do and kind of update information. But that would be the direct line for me.
Cool. We will have that down in the description or at fearfreepassive.com. So, Patrick, I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for sharing what you do, and hope to see you soon.
Great. Thanks, Lucas. Appreciate it, man.
All right. Thanks.